Dear colleagues, dear teachers of English, good afternoon and welcome to our English seminar for today. Dear, in this seminar, I'm going to talk about the skills, and today I will talk about the listening skill. As I said previously, when in our last meeting when I talked about the speaking skill, that the whole skills are important. They are integrated skills, and I told you that the listening, speaking, reading and writing are very important. If you want to teach your students the English language, you have to teach them all the skills. But today I'm going to talk about the listening skill, how to teach listening. So, before I start, dear, if you have any question or if you have anything you want to add, would you please call us and we are ready to answer all your questions. Well, dear, for this skill, listening, it's very important to teach our students how to listen. How to listen, what affects listening. You know that our students face difficulties when listening to a foreign language. When they want to learn English, they face difficulties. What are these difficulties? How to face these difficulties? Today, I'm going to talk about the difficulties, the stages of teaching listening, the activities that are required in the classroom in order to teach your students. And I told you before, then I remind you that each one of you knows how to teach his student. You know the differences in classroom. Each classroom has its own environment, and you are free to do it, but do it please. So let's go on to talk about listening and to see what effect. Why is it difficult? Why is it difficult to listen to another language? Why is it difficult? Teaching listening is very important because it helps our students to acquire the language and to speak. You know, listening is an oral. It's oral, that he listens to English in order to be able to speak it. So he should recognize, he should know everything related to the text or to the things that he is listening to. So for teaching listening, what does listening seem, why does it seem so difficult? For our students, listening seems difficult because of many things. What are they? Let me tell you about you know the difficulties that face our students, and you know how to overcome these difficulties. Let's talk about them, then later on talk about overcoming them. Our students quickly forget what's heard, right? When our students hear something, they sometimes forget. They quickly forget what they hear. This is one problem. Another thing, they don't recognize words they know. What about the words they don't know? So sometimes they don't recognize the words they know when they listen to a topic or to something. Sometimes our students understand the words, but not intended message. They understand them, but they don't understand the intended message beyond them. Sometimes our students neglect the next part when thinking about the meaning. They want to answer the questions, right? Because according to the approach, they have a test. According to the text, may fill in the gaps or choose the multiple choice. So they neglect the next part when thinking about the meaning. What else? Our students sometimes are unable to form a mental representation from word heard. Another thing, they don't understand the subsequent parts of input because of earlier problems. So all of these problems our students face when they listen to a topic. So how do we help them in order to teach them to listen, understand what they listen to? Another point, is listening passive or active? Is it passive? Is it active? Of course, you know, dear colleagues, that listening is active, right? Listening is considered to involve the active selecting and interpreting of information coming from authority close, so that the listener can identify what's happening and what's being expressed. So it's passive, right? What does listening involve? Now let's talk about this skill. What does it involve? You know, dear, it involves as a skill many things, like identifying information, searching memories, relating that information to those memories, filling in the proper spots, or creating a new place for it, and using it when needed. Now, who are the effective listeners? You know, we have effective listeners. Who are they? When talking about effective listeners, they are the listeners who monitor comprehension, the listeners who associate new information with background knowledge. You know that when someone listens to something, he makes connection, he associates between the new thing and the previous one, which are in his background knowledge. The effective listener is the listener who makes inferences about the known words, right? When he continues listening, even if, so the listeners continue listening, even if they don't understand certain words. They may have the topic in general understanding to the content of the topic, so they continue listening even if they don't understand certain words. They have metacognitive knowledge about the task, and sometimes listeners manage to get the main idea rather than listen word for word. Now, what interferes with listening comprehension? You know, dear colleagues, that there are many points to talk about. For example, unfamiliar vocabularies. Unfamiliar vocabularies, when students listen to unfamiliar vocabularies, this interferes with their listening comprehension. We have sometimes a grammar. They may not know about certain grammar. They may study grammar. I'm talking about all grades. Okay? So they may understand, they don't understand this grammar, so they can follow the listening. What about the text too long? When they are exposed to a text which is too long, so it's very difficult for them to follow. So sometimes we have several people talking. If one person is talking, it's okay, sometimes two people. But when we have several people talking, they cause problem for the listener. Sometimes unfamiliar text. The unfamiliar text, they need to think. So when they think, they can't follow the other part of the text. When they have or when they face lots of details, they should memorize these details, listen to them very carefully, and do the task which is they are asked to do. When the topic is not interesting, so have them listen to interesting topics. When the theme is not clear, sometimes the accent is not clear. Sometimes the speed, the slow or quick, according to the speaker. Where we have idiomatic speech, because you know every language has its idioms. Sometimes the listener, the person who wants to learn the language, and especially our students, they don't know these idioms. So idiomatic speech is important, which affect listening. Sometimes the task is too difficult. Sometimes they are not prepared. Our students are not prepared for the discussion. They are not prepared for the format. So these things affect listening. Now let me ask you this question. What approach do we use in our schools when teaching our students English language? We have an approach in order to help them. According or when in concern with the listening skill, how do we teach them listening? You know that we have what is called the TTT approach. What is it? So most teachers in Syria teach listening comprehension. TTT approach, it means test, test, and test. It means sink or swim method, right? We have multiple choice questions to teach listening comprehension. The teacher look at his students, listen to this text, listen to this conversation, for example, then do this task, fill in the task, or multiple choice, or true or false. Now, if this approach is not useful anymore, what should we do? What do we have another one? Then how? If not TTT approach, then how? Well, how to prepare students for listening tasks. And here is the essence of our speech on our meeting for today. We have principles. Principles of teaching listening comprehension. What are they? What are the principles? The principles, first of all, let students understand how foreigners speak English and build students' sensitivities. Have them listen to a native speaker, to a person speaking English. When they listen, when you have your audio, when you have any aid which help your students listen to a native speaker, have them listen and have them build their sensitivities. What else? All we can do is give them some guidelines, provide an opportunity for meaningful practice and trust. They will learn these things for themselves. We have to encourage them. We need to trust our students that they can understand what they listen to. At the same time, they are able to speak the same language. Now, this is, as I said, we talked about principle of teaching listening. How do we involve our students in focused listening? There are many things to talk about for today. Please, our teacher, make it relevant to students. Make it interesting. When you need your students to listen to a topic or to something, to a conversation, make it interesting in order to attract their attention, to make them learn the language with joy. They feel interested in learning English language. Provide background knowledge. If you want them to be involved and to focus, let them have the background information. For example, tell them the story, or give them some sentences, or encourage them to speak, or to give their own ideas. We have pre-listening exercise to activate content. This is very important, pre-listening, and I'm going to talk about this later on in details. We use variety of activities in which I'm going to talk about them and help our teachers. And if you have any new idea, please tell us. We have variety of activities to help our students learn and listen. We have three stages, as I said. In order to teach listening, we have three important stages. What are they? What are the three stages of a listening lesson? First of all, we have the pre-listening. Pre-listening, which is the preparation stage. It's before listening. We have something to be done before exposing students to listen. Have them do something before they listen to the text, which is very important stage. It's the pre-listening stage. What else? We have the while listening. Now, after we prepare our students for the listening, we have the while listening stage, which is the actual listening. Here, when the student listens, and we have the task response. The third stage is the post-listening stage. The post, which is after listening. And we have here the feedback for the work. So these three stages are very important. The pre-listening is very important to prepare our students for this listening. Then we have the while, then we have the post-listening, which is very important. This is for the listening lesson. Now, let me talk about each one or each stage in details. Let's start with pre-listening stage. Pre-listening activities, what are they? Let me show you. Rational. The pre-listening activities, we have to motivate our students by make the topic relevant and interesting. We have to motivate them by make it interesting, as I told you before. Make the topics interesting in order to attract their attention and make them eager to learn the language or English. Another important thing is activating existing knowledge for new knowledge to build upon. You know your students and you know the knowledge that they have acquired during the English lessons. So let's activate the existing knowledge in order to make a relation between the new things and the old ones, the new knowledge, and to be built upon the old one. It's very important. This is before listening. We are talking about the pre-listening. What else? We have introducing key vocabularies and key structures that students need in order to understand the text. How can they understand the text? With very few or very new vocabularies. Let's as teachers introduce the new vocabs, and you have your ways to introduce the new vocabularies for your students. This is for the pre-listening. I hope that it's clear. Motivating students, activating existing knowledge, and introducing new vocabularies. This is before listening. What about while listening? Now, before moving to while listening, pre-listening activities also acquire very important things, which is predicting. Have them predict. As I said, we attract their attention. How? By interesting topics and by asking questions like brainstormings, or to attract them, predicting, have them predict about a subject. For example, you have this picture, I give you this picture for examples. Ask them questions like, what are these people doing? Or what are they saying to each other? Have them predict. What else? Setting the scene. For example, introducing people or places, activating schemata. So setting the scene is very important. Predicting, setting the scene, all of these things are very important in the pre-listening. So there are a variety of activities. As I said, I hope they are clear. Now, let's move to the while listening. When our students are prepared for the listening task, so we have then the while. While they are listening, what should we do? How do we help them? While listening, you know, dear, sometimes no response, just listen. We ask our students, please listen. Please listen to this text, no response. Sometimes we have them do something like a tick box, and I will give you an example about the tick box. And you know it, when they tick the true and false. Sometimes they have sequencing or act. These things, these activities are done while listening, while students listen to a topic. Act or draw. You ask them, listen and draw. Listen and do something. Listen and fill in the gaps. Or just no response, just listen. We have to gap fill, as I said. Take notes. I will give you here the chart to like a tick box. When you have your students, look here, we have a table, look at these students here, and there are some subjects that they like, put a tick if they like, and cross if they dislike. While listening, we may produce such a table for our students and have them fill in the gaps. This is why listening. Now, after we finish listening, I talked about the pre, then we have the while. Now, after listening, we have the stage of evaluation, the feedback, right? What activities? We have many activities, variety of activities. For example, we have multiple choice questions. And you know that our students are supposed to choose A, B, C, and D, right? Answering questions, we may ask them questions relating to the topic they have just listened to. Taking notes and gap filling. They have like preparation, dictation, reconstruction, and correcting. They have these things which is after post-listening activities. Sometimes we have our students do something like role play, and it's a very important activity. Sometimes ask them to debate, ask and answer question, discuss an idea or an event or about a character. Have them discuss. This is after listening. As I said, discussion is very important, and I give you this example for multiple choice, that you ask them to listen to something, then they have to choose. So I hope they are clear. We have variety of activities after listening. So the three stages are very important: the pre-listening, the while, and the post-listening. Now, we have types of listening tasks. I'm helping you. I know you have a variety of tasks, but now let's state some tasks for our teachers in order to evaluate their students. They have a variety of tasks to do. What are they? For example, multiple matching. Multiple matching, you know, especially for these grades A1 and A2, we use it a lot, like matching description with pictures, or matching stories with titles and endings, or matching speakers with professions, you know, matching the speakers with feelings. Matching is very required when, this is one task. It's the one type of the tasks required for listening skill. In order to acquire this skill, which is very important, the listening. We have, as I said, the multiple choice. They should, our students, when they listen to a topic, they should choose. For example, what do you suppose the relationship between the two speakers is? Have them, the boss and employee, brother and sister, doctor and patient, or we are listening to a man explaining the values of exercising, or giving advice to healthy lifestyle, or giving tips on healthy eating habits. Many things, many types. I will talk about all of them today. We have the true and false. It's general, right? You are using multiple choice and the true and false. Not stated anything. They have to choose whether these sentences are true or false according to the text they have listened to. This is after listening. Or to fill in the gaps when they listen to a text or to a topic. They are supposed to fill in the gap with words or with phrases. When they listen, they understand, they may have notes, and they should fill in the gaps in the missing word or phrases. Sometimes students are supposed to give short answers, not a complete sentence. For example, after listening to someone speaking, we ask our students, what the speaker's profession? He said, a teacher. Short response. What the speaker looking for? Anything. Short answer. Sometimes we have listening clause. For example, we have a text. Our students listen to it very carefully. Sometimes we need to make them or to have them listen twice if the text, we feel that it's difficult for our students, in order to fill in the gaps or to do the tasks related to it. Sometimes our students take notes, note-taking. They take notes or they summarize. They summarize the topic. So we ask our students, you are supposed to listen to something, and after you listen, you have to summarize the story, for example. Give me a summary, okay? Just to remember and have them speak and write. We have listening activities with focus to overcome difficulties. As I started my session when I talked about the difficulties related to our students, we have some activities in order to help our students overcome these difficulties when they listen to English. How? We give them charts, for example. This is one method. Give them charts or categories. We sometimes ask questions. Ask them questions ahead of time. Sometimes we show pictures, some pictures or charts relating to the topics in order to help them understand more. Sometimes we discuss the topic first before presenting the topic for our students. We discuss with them the topic, the main things relating to the topic. Sometimes as teachers we describe, so describing the content is very important in order to overcome difficulties relating to the listening. We have role-playing the situation. Role-playing the situation also make them interested in following and listening more carefully. Providing keyword lists and sometimes explaining some words which we may feel that they are difficult for them, or they may forget about them. So describing, providing keyword lists. Brainstorming is another important method in order to overcome the difficulties related to listening. Brainstorming the situation, pros and cons. Have them predict. Predicting is also very important. Have them predict about the topic or the subject. Doing the follow-ups that allows them to connect directly with their lives. We have other listening activities. What are they? The other listening activities which are very important, we have the follow-up activities. More listening, more writing activities, more role-playing. We use activities to wake our students up. Wake them up, for example, jazz chants, jokes. Jokes are interesting, polite, to help them keep on listening, feeling interested. Puzzles, doing puzzles is also very important. Poems, some students are interested in poems and poetry. These activities in order to help them overcome difficulties. Well, strategies to teach listening comprehension. Now we talked about difficulties, how to overcome difficulties, and the tasks which are required, the three important stages which are the pre, the while, and the post, and the activities which are supposed to be done in the classroom in order to help our students listen carefully and understand what they are listening to. Now we have strategies to teach listening comprehension. We have two important strategies, the bottom-up strategies and the top-down strategies. What are they? Let me tell you about them in details. The bottom-up strategies, we need words. We are talking about words. For example, counting syllables by using rubber band, teaching word stress, sometimes circling stressed syllable or underlying unstressed syllable, circle the most stressed syllable in the sentence, sometimes using noisemaker like a flute so that students can understand the sound and stresses. Focus on the movement. So this is related to bottom-up strategy. Counting syllables, teaching stress, circling, stitching, it means circling the right syllable, underlying, you sometimes underline or pick the stressed one or the unstressed one. This is one method. Another thing to talk about in bottom-up strategy, the pronunciation, which is very important. Our students should know how to pronounce the English words. We have minimal part practice like lies and rise, pin and pen. Sometimes we use a grammar like present simple and present and past tenses. For example, they share the food or they shared the food. Sometimes we have pronunciation change, blurred speech. What do you mean? Where is the boy? Teach them intonation. We sometimes teach intonation when we say the sentences, when we say certain sentences without telling them that, especially in the lower grades, grade 1, 2, 3, we teach them the nature without telling them that it's intonation, right? So all of these things are important strategies in teaching listening. We have other things which relate not to the word, to word phrases. I talked about words. Now what about word phrases? For word phrases, listen and find the word group. You tell your students, listen carefully to the text and find the word group which carry meaning. Take scripts. Mark where they think the thoughts group are. Sometimes we have thoughts group together. Mark them. Listen to the tape. Get students to notice the way how English is spoken. It's really important. We have finished the bottom-up strategy. Let's move to another strategy, which is the top-down strategy. Now here we have the thinking strategy. I talked about the words, the syllables, pronunciation, intonation, picking the words and the phrases. Now, thinking strategy. What about thinking strategy? Get the students to determine the setting, the interpersonal relationship, the topics, the mood, the main idea. Get students tell you all about these things, the setting, the interpersonal relationships, the topics, the mood, the main idea. The thinking strategy is really important. Help them think and predict and infer. Example, give them 1 or 2 words. Let students make inference and guess what the story is about to develop guessing ability. We may tell them, for example, there is a king, a prince, treasure. Can you give me sentences? Let them guess. Let them predict anything in order to help them listen carefully, have them speak and think, and give them words. For example, guess the answers as soon as they see the multiple choice. So we make it clear, we make it interesting for our students. We get them in the topic they are listening or they are supposed to listen to. We have other activities relating to listening. Sometimes we have dictation. What about dictation activities? We may have single word dictation or line by line dictation or full text dictation or student-centered dictation. What about each one? Now let's talk about single word dictation. For the single word, students have to match the word with the picture. Our student listen. He has many pictures and he listens. Then he match the word with the picture. This is when one thing. Another one, we have many examples. Students have to choose the word they hear. Give them many words and they have to choose the word they hear. Only take the word or circle or draw anything. I told you about them earlier. Have them choose the word. This is one way for dictating one single word. Students have to write down the word they hear. They have to write it down, the word, when they hear the definition, for example. They may hear the word and write it down. They may hear the definition of the word and write the word itself. Students have to do odd man out. Give them variety of words and have them choose the odd one out. Or students have to make word association. For example, circle 2 words that are associated with a new vocabulary word. Students make sentences sometimes out of the words they hear. For example, you are supposed to listen to some words and give me your sentences, maybe including all the words, or sometimes include just few. This is according to your students. Students have to write words in groups or columns according to pronunciation differences. The words may be read alone or in complete sentences. Students have to write words read out by the teacher. They need to put the words in groups or column according to their characteristics, to the group characteristics. Now what's about dictation? Now I have talked about dictation for single word. Now I will move on to talk about dictation for line and line. What do you mean by it? How do we do it with our students? So here students respond to the line or sentence by filling in the words or the verb, doing multiple choice exercise, or correcting errors, deleting unnecessary words, for example. Sometimes putting scrambled words in order. Scrambled words, it's very nice. Sometimes we make a role play putting scrambled words between our students and have them form the sentence. It's a kind of dictation, line by line doing it. Students have a line form text. They dictate their line to their teacher in the order they think is appropriate. The teacher writes exactly what they say. As they say it, including mistakes, the class then adjusts and correct as necessary. So they write and they give it to their teacher. They give it to you, dear teachers. You see it. If it's correct, you read it. If it's not correct, you correct it and you read it correctly in order to have them listen to the correct sentences. Sometimes the teacher reads out the text line by line. After each line, students pass their paper to their right and correct any error before continuing dictation. So it's very nice and it helps our students learn English. Full text dictation. Now we have the word, then line by line, then we have full text dictation. Students read list of sentences and check whether the sentences are true or false, then listening to the text. Students have multiple choice exercise relating to the full text exercise or dictation. Students have an incomplete version of the text with gaps to fill in. Students respond to the text by answering questions, sometimes short questions, sometimes complete sentences. Students write down the content words in the blanks. Now, dictation for full text is really clear, right? We will complete talking about it because we have many activities to be done. Students should draw what the teacher describes. They may color, complete, etc. Many things to do. Students or the teacher reads the text out. This is one method. The teacher reads the text out. The students have a copy of the text with errors, missing words or extra words added. They correct the text, they correct it and make it the same as the teacher. What else? Students write down the whole text. After doing all of this, you can follow any step with your, or any method, any way to teach your students. Teacher reads out the text very quickly, while students write down what they can. Then in groups, they try to reconstruct the text. In the end, they compare with the original text. Interesting, right? Well, dictation, also student-centered dictation, which is the last one in dictation. We have information gap. Information gap, you know, our students are, they have practices in their books to do it. According to the listening, this strategy is very important to teach our students how to do it. Students work in pair. They work in pair, each one having incomplete version of text, with gaps in different places, not allowing to look to each other's text. They read out what they have, each completing their own text. Another method is information hunting. In information hunting, when students work in groups of 3, the text for each group is put on the other side of the room. Student, for example, number 1, the first student goes to the text, reads it and memorizes the section, returns to the group and says what he remembered. We have another student who is student number 2, for example, writes it down. And another student, which is, we call it student 3, checks what student 2 has written. They may then change roles and continue. Now, what affects listening comprehension difficulties as we talk? What affect them? Many things, right? The way information is organized affects listening comprehension difficulty. The way of information, for example, there are some indications that listeners remember more of the content of an expository text when they are exposed to the text. They can remember it more than informative titles, and when the more points before illustration, the more points. The listener, especially the listener, when he is familiarity with the topic or the way of delivery for his concern with the issues involved in his interest in the topic under consideration. Factors affecting listening comprehension difficulties are various. I'm just mentioning few. The listener familiarity with a particular topic of discourse, purposefulness of text for the reader or the listener, the nature of the text. Text describing objects, giving instructions are static, are supposed to be easier to understand than text that focus on people's opinions and ideas, the abstract. So people find understanding the static topics easier than understanding the abstract when they listen. Other things, factors affecting comprehension difficulties, visual support. Dear students, dear teachers, help your students by giving them graphs, photographs, tables, play important role in the interpretation of the reader or listener as reading and listening. Types of listening task. We have evaluative listening task, writing summaries, or distinguishing facts from opinion. They are more difficult than those involving immediate response, right? So, finally, I would like to give you some thoughts. As I said, how important it is to teach listening. We talked about the stages, the strategies, the tasks done. We talked about dictation, teaching, have them listen more, and I have final thoughts for you. Don't expect learners to remember more than a native speaker would. He is a learner. The language is new. Have them listen more than one time, once, twice, and 3 times in order to understand. Testing understanding rather than memories. Think more about the process than the product. So, dear teachers, dear colleagues, it's very important for us all to help our students acquire all the skills, the listening, the reading, the writing, and the speaking. As I said, I talked about the speaking. Today I have mentioned the listening, and I hope that this session is useful for you. Thank you for joining me. Yes, thank you for joining me, and see you other times, and goodbye.